My name is Lisa Heron. I'm 34 years old, and until recently, I believed that no matter how chaotic life became, my marriage was the one place I could rest without fear. I was wrong in ways I didn't even know were possible. I never imagined I'd be telling this story to strangers. But when you're betrayed in silence, when someone chooses convenience over compassion during the worst moment of your life, you either swallow it and disappear or you speak. I chose to speak. I work as a civil engineer for the state transportation department. It's not glamorous, and no one has ever called it exciting. But it's stable, predictable. It pays around $92,000 a year before overtime, comes with good benefits, and lets me sleep at night knowing the bills are covered. I've always been the responsible one, the steady one, the person people lean on when things fall apart. That's probably why I fell for Ethan. We met 6 years ago at a friend's housewarming party. He was charming in that effortless, practiced way, confident smile, sharp jokes, always talking about his future like it was just one lucky break away from exploding into something big. He worked in marketing, bounced between consulting gigs, and made maybe half of what I did, but he talked like money was temporary and greatness was inevitable. I believed him. We moved in together after 8 months, got married a year later. Looking back now, the warning signs were everywhere, but I told myself love meant compromise, patience, faith. 3 months after the wedding, Ethan lost his job. He said it was a blessing in disguise, said he needed time to find himself before committing to another corporate role that would crush his creativity. I supported him, emotionally, financially, completely. That phase lasted 2 years. 2 years of me paying the mortgage on the condo I'd bought before we ever met, covering groceries, insurance, trips he insisted were necessary for his mental health. Every time I got a bonus or raise, something new suddenly became essential. A designer jacket, a new watch, renovating part of the condo he didn't even own. I ignored the discomfort in my gut because I loved him, because marriage was supposed to be teamwork. Then my mom got sick. Cancer doesn't give you time to prepare. One day she was complaining about back pain. The next, doctors were talking in hushed voices about aggressive progression. They gave us 3 months. She barely made it 6 weeks. 6 weeks from diagnosis to death. I flew out to handle everything. Hospital visits, paperwork, funeral arrangements. Nights were the worst. Alone in a cold hotel room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the sound of my own breathing. Every night, I called Ethan. Sometimes once, sometimes twice. I needed to hear his voice, needed reassurance that I wasn't facing this alone, that someone still saw me, still held me, even from miles away. Most nights, I got voicemail. Other times, a quick text. Swamped with a client, out with friends. We'll talk tomorrow. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the person who had promised to stand beside me when life fell apart. 2 weeks after my mom passed, sitting on the edge of that hotel bed in Savannah, my phone lit up with a notification from our shared cloud account. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I just happened to see it. All calls from this contact will be silenced. My name, muted. For 2 weeks. The same 2 weeks I had been watching my mother fade away. The same 2 weeks I had been calling him every night, sometimes crying so hard I could barely breathe. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening like someone had punched straight through it. All those unanswered calls, all those nights I blamed myself for bothering him. He hadn't missed my calls. He had chosen not to hear me. I flew home early. The funeral was over. The house was cleared. The paperwork could wait. I needed to be home. Needed his arms around me. Needed to finally break down somewhere that felt familiar. The condo was silent when I walked in. Empty. Too quiet after weeks of hospitals and family and grief. I dropped my bag and collapsed onto the couch, exhaustion finally catching up with me. Then his tablet lit up on the coffee table. A message preview flashed across the screen. I miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to take you to Cabo once the divorce is final. You deserve way better than that boring engineer. My hands started shaking. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The words burned themselves into my memory. I called Ethan one more time, watched the tablet as I did. Nothing. No notification. No ring. That's when I checked our shared account settings, the feature we'd set up years ago in case one of us lost our phone. And there it was. My contact had been muted deliberately, exactly 2 weeks ago. The day I flew out after getting the news about my mom's terminal diagnosis. Not a glitch, not an accident. He had silenced me on purpose. When Ethan walked through the door later, carrying shopping bags, he froze when he saw me. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly followed by something that looked like guilt before he smoothed it away. "You're back early," he said. "Not I missed you, not I'm sorry about your mom. Just irritation." He was wearing clothes I'd never seen, fresh haircut, new cologne, like he was living a completely different life. I looked at him and realized I didn't recognize the man I'd married. "Ethan," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt, "why did you mute my calls?" His face went pale, and in that moment, before he even answered, I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the beginning of the end. The silence after my question felt physical, like the air had thickened into something heavy and suffocating. Ethan stood just inside the doorway with his shopping bags hanging from one hand, like props he hadn't rehearsed how to carry. His eyes darted over my face, searching for clues. How much does she know? How angry is she? Can I talk my way out of this? He blinked, too fast, swallowed, then forced a laugh that landed wrong. "My phone's been acting up," he said, rolling his eyes as if I was the inconvenience. "I've been missing notifications from everyone. You know how iPhones are." A lie, not even a good one. He said it with the same tone people use when they claim traffic made them late, annoyed that they have to explain anything at all. I could have pulled up the settings right then and shoved the proof in his face, could have watched him stutter and backpedal and invent excuses. But my grief was a hollowed-out space inside me, and something colder had started to fill it. I nodded once, slow, right. He seemed relieved that I didn't push. The relief sharpened into confidence, like a man who thought he'd successfully stepped around a landmine. He dropped the bags onto the counter and started pulling out clothes with the tags still on. "Look what I found," he said, holding up a button-down shirt like it was a peace offering. "On sale. Only $200. $200 for a shirt." While my mother's medical bills were still sitting in a folder in my suitcase. Then, as if he'd just remembered he was supposed to be sympathetic, he added casually, "Your mom would have loved this scarf." He waved it in the air, some overpriced strip of fabric. "It's too bad she never got to see it." I stared at him. My mom was dead, and that was what he offered me. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I'm here," not, "How are you holding up?" Just, "Too bad she never got to see my new scarf." The world didn't tilt. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just felt something inside me click into place, like a lock turning. "I'm tired," I said. "I'm going to shower." In the bathroom, I turned on the water, not because I needed it, but because I needed noise. Something to cover the sound of my breathing, my thoughts, the low animal panic that wanted to surge up my throat. I leaned my hands on the sink and stared at my reflection. My eyes looked older than they had 2 weeks ago, like grief had etched new lines into my face. But underneath the exhaustion, I saw something else. Clarity. When I stepped out, Ethan was sprawled on the bed, scrolling through his phone, his expression smooth and casual, like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just buried my mother, like he hadn't deliberately silenced me. "Are you hungry?" he asked with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I could order something, but we should probably do something cheap since you've been spending so much on hotels." The audacity hit me so hard I almost laughed. As if I'd been on vacation, as if I'd chosen to sleep in a hotel room because it was fun. "Sure," I said, matching his tone. "Whatever you want." That night, we ate takeout in front of the TV, the kind of meal you eat when you don't want to face the person sitting across from you. Ethan kept glancing at his phone, angling the screen away from me. When it buzzed, his whole body tightened like a reflex. He excused himself to the bathroom twice. I watched him carefully, cataloging details the way my brain does when I'm on a project site. Measurement, timing, patterns. And somewhere between his second bathroom trip and his third casual lie, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him like a wounded spouse in a dramatic scene. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of watching me collapse. My mother's voice floated up in my memory, soft but firm, the way she used to speak when I was a teenager, spiraling into emotion. "Never make decisions when you're angry. Sleep on it first." I wasn't angry. Not the way Ethan expected. I was focused. When he slid into bed later, he left a careful gap between us, like he didn't know if I would reach for him or push him away. He pretended to scroll, then pretended to yawn, then finally turned off the lamp. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. On the surface, everything was still intact. The marriage, the condo, the routines. But underneath, it was already gone. All that remained was the question of how cleanly I could dismantle it. Morning came. Ethan stretched like a man who'd slept peacefully. I've got to meet a client today, he said, pulling on jeans. Just a few hours. Saturday, of course. Okay, I said, take your time. He kissed my cheek, quick, light, automatic. Then he left, whistling faintly as the door clicked shut behind him. The second the lock turned, I moved. I didn't pace, I didn't panic, I didn't collapse onto the floor. I went straight to the desk in the living room and opened my laptop. First, finances. Thank God. Thank God. I had never added Ethan to the deed of my condo. I bought it before we met, and my name was the only one on the paperwork. That choice, made years ago out of simple caution, suddenly felt like a life raft. We had a joint checking account with about $8,500 in it, mostly my money. A savings account with around $42,000, again, mostly mine, built from years of overtime and careful planning while Ethan found himself. I called the bank. My voice sounded calm, almost bored, like I was asking about interest rates. Within minutes, I transferred everything except $500 into a new account in my name only. Then I logged into the credit card statements. My stomach tightened, not with shock, but with disgust. Thousands of dollars in charges over the past 2 weeks. Restaurants, boutique hotels, luxury spas, designer stores. While I'd been signing hospice forms and picking out my mother's casket, Ethan had been spending like a man celebrating freedom. I took screenshots, saved PDFs, backed everything up twice. Next, evidence. I opened our shared cloud account. Photos, messages, location history. And there it was, a neat trail of betrayal, laid out like someone hadn't even bothered to hide. Location history showed regular visits to an upscale high-rise in the wealthy part of town, the area where doctors and lawyers live. Not once, not twice, over and over. Text messages with a contact saved under something laughably obvious. Claire Pilates. Ethan hadn't been to Pilates since the year we bought those unused resistance bands. The messages weren't romantic in the sweet way people pretend affairs are. They were smug, lazy, comfortable. And buried among them was the detail that turned my blood to ice. He had mentioned muting me, casually, like it was nothing, like I was an annoyance. I scrolled, breathing shallowly, my fingers cold on the keyboard. Photos loaded next. Ethan in restaurants I'd only driven past. Ethan with a woman whose face was familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. Not a stranger. An ex. The ex-girlfriend he had told me was ancient history, the one he claimed he hadn't spoken to in years. There they were together, close, laughing, her hand on his chest like she belonged there, like I didn't exist. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a 2-week lapse. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a second life. I sat back, staring at the screen until the letters blurred. My mother was gone. The one person who had loved me without conditions, who had answered every call, every time, even when she was exhausted, even when she was sick. And the person I'd chosen to build a life with had silenced me when I needed him most. Grief, betrayal, humiliation, it all pressed down on me. But instead of crushing me, it hardened into something sharp. I picked up my phone and searched for divorce attorneys. The first one that came up had a reputation for being thorough and ruthless, with reviews that described her as polite but terrifying. Perfect. I left a message requesting an urgent appointment. Then I opened a notes app and wrote a list, simple and clinical. Bank accounts secured. Evidence saved. Attorney contacted. Next steps. Remove access. Change passwords. Protect assets. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Running late. Don't wait up for dinner. Might be back super late. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I set the phone down without replying. Instead, I packed a small bag with essentials and checked into a Marriott downtown. Not because I was running. Because I needed space to think clearly. To plan without him watching my face for cracks. Sitting on the edge of the hotel bed that night, I stared at Ethan's contact on my phone. 5 years of messages, calls, photos, a whole history sitting in my palm like it meant something. My thumb hovered. 3 taps. Block this caller. It wasn't emotional. It was surgical. He wanted silence. I would give him silence. But unlike him, I would do it openly, directly, and permanently. As the screen confirmed the block, my phone began to light up. Notifications exploding like fireworks. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. He'd realized. And for the first time in 2 weeks, he couldn't reach me. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and felt an unfamiliar calm settle over me. Ethan still thought he controlled the narrative. He had no idea what I was about to do next. The next morning, I met my divorce attorney. Her office sat on the fourth floor of a brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled faintly of old books and expensive coffee. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed, composed, and utterly unimpressed by drama. Exactly the kind of person I needed. I laid everything out. The muted calls, the affair, the financial records, the screenshots, the photos, the location history. I didn't embellish. I didn't editorialize. I just handed her the truth, neatly organized in folders like blueprints for a bridge that had already collapsed. She skimmed through the documents, nodding slowly. "You've done more preparation than most people who walk in here," she said finally, "especially under these circumstances." "My mother died last week," I replied. "I didn't have the luxury of falling apart." She looked up then, really looked at me. "I'm sorry for your loss." 2 words, sincere, no excuses, no deflection. It struck me how easy it actually was to say. We discussed strategy. Georgia being a no-fault state meant Ethan's affair wouldn't automatically guarantee me everything, but the documentation of financial misconduct, especially during my mother's illness, gave us leverage. "The condo is yours," she said firmly. "You bought it before the marriage and kept it in your name. That's huge." I signed the paperwork to initiate the divorce. My hand didn't shake. "Most people cried in that chair," she told me. "Yelled, bargained." I just nodded, thanked her, and walked out feeling strangely light. Another funeral, I thought, but this one was for something that had already died. The legal wheels moved faster than I expected. By the end of the week, Ethan had been served. My phone stayed silent because I'd blocked him everywhere. But the noise came anyway, just from different directions. His father left a voicemail on my work phone. "Lisa, this is Robert. Ethan is beside himself. He says there's been a misunderstanding. You two can work this out." Delete. His mother tried next, then his sister, then a mutual friend who opened with, "I'm not taking sides, but..." I declined every call. I wasn't interested in playing referee for a man who had deliberately chosen not to hear me while my mother was dying. 4 days later, my coworker Jake texted me. "Jay, your husband is in the lobby." "Me? What?" "Jay, security wants to know what to do. He looks intense." My chest tightened, not with fear, but with anger. This was my workplace, my one place of normalcy. I called Ethan from my office phone. The hope in his voice when he answered made my skin crawl. "Lisa," he breathed, "you finally called." "Please leave my workplace," I said evenly. "If you need to communicate, do it through my attorney. Her information is in the papers you received." "The accounts are empty," he snapped. "My cards aren't working. What is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with you," I replied, "is not my problem anymore." I hung up. Through the glass wall of my office, I watched security escort him out. His hair was uncombed, his face flushed. He scanned the windows like he was looking for me. I stepped back out of sight. That night, I went back to the condo when I knew he wouldn't be there. I needed clothes, documents, and confirmation that my instincts hadn't been wrong. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. The place was destroyed. Clothes thrown everywhere. Dishes smashed. Framed photos ripped apart. My bookshelf overturned. The TV screen cracked. I walked slowly through the wreckage, my footsteps echoing in the chaos, and then I saw it. My mother's jewelry box. The antique wooden one she'd kept on her dresser my entire childhood. The one thing I'd brought back with me after the funeral. Shattered. I felt something go cold behind my ribs. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I took photos. Every room. Every broken item. Every angle. Time-stamped. Clinical. Then I called the police. The officer who arrived surveyed the damage and let out a low whistle. "Divorce?" "Yes." "Document everything," he said gently. "Change the locks if it's your place." It was. I called a locksmith while the officer was still there. That same night, I texted Ethan for the first time since blocking him. Just once. "The police have documented the property damage. Do not attempt to enter the condo again. All communication goes through attorneys." The response was immediate. Missed calls. Texts from new numbers. Messages from his parents. I ignored them all. My attorney was thrilled when I sent her the photos. "This strengthens our position significantly," she said. "Judges don't look kindly on destruction of property, especially sentimental items tied to a recent death." The next escalation came from a number I didn't recognize. "Unknown. This has gone too far. You're hurting him." I stared at the message. Then another came in. "Unknown. We need to talk. Woman to woman." I knew exactly who it was. Claire. The ex-girlfriend. The other life. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. Public place, daylight, coffee shop. She looked different in person. Smaller. Tired. No confident smile. No smug energy. "I'm not here to apologize," she said immediately. "I know my role. I'm here because Ethan lied to both of us." She slid her phone across the table. Messages, photos, voice notes. And there it was, the thing that made my stomach flip. He'd bragged about muting me, mocked it, laughed about how dramatic I was being while my mother was dying. Claire's voice shook. "I didn't know about your mom until later. When I found out, I was disgusted." She hesitated. "He's not who you think he is." "I already knew that." "What do you want?" I asked. She swallowed. "He stole from me. Cash, jewelry. I want it back, and I'll testify about everything." It wasn't mercy that made me agree. It was symmetry. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically, I mean emotionally. The kind of cold that strips everything down to facts and leaves no room for excuses. The kind of cold Ethan had never learned to survive in. He sat at the opposite table in a navy suit I recognized immediately. One I'd bought him 2 years ago, after a bonus, because he'd said he needed to look successful. Today, it hung on him differently. Too loose, too heavy, like it belonged to a man he used to pretend to be. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, his eyes widened, not with love, not with regret, but with panic. Like a gambler realizing too late the house wasn't bluffing. His lawyer went first. They painted him as the wounded husband, claimed he'd sacrificed his career to support mine, that I'd cut him off financially without warning, that he was grieving my mother too and had been emotionally overwhelmed. I listened quietly, hands folded in my lap. Then it was our turn. My attorney stood, calm and precise. She started with the bank records, dates, amounts, patterns. Thousands of dollars spent on luxury experiences during the exact weeks I was arranging hospice care and funeral services. She showed the screenshots of muted calls, the timestamps, the intentional silence. Then came the police report, photos of the condo projected onto a screen, broken furniture, destroyed electronics, and finally the image that made the judge lean forward. My mother's shattered jewelry box. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't look away. Ethan shifted in his seat. And then my attorney said the words his side wasn't prepared for. The petitioner calls a surprise witness. Claire walked in, Ethan's face drained of color. Her testimony was brutal, not because it was dramatic, but because it was casual, matter of fact, the way truth always is when it's no longer being protected. She confirmed the affair had begun nearly a year before my mother's diagnosis, that Ethan had talked openly about divorcing me once he secured something better, that he'd laughed about muting my calls. The judge didn't interrupt. By the time Claire finished, Ethan was staring at the table, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. The ruling didn't take long. The condo remained mine, no equity awarded to Ethan. Division of assets considered his documented financial misconduct. Spousal support denied. Ethan ordered to pay for property damage. Complete, decisive, final. Outside the courtroom, Ethan tried to approach me. "This isn't over," he hissed, mascara smudged, voice cracking. "You ruined my life." I looked at him calmly. "You silenced me when I needed you most," I said. "I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." I walked away. The aftermath was quiet. No dramatic collapse, no public apology, just the slow erosion of everything he thought was guaranteed. Claire left him when she realized there was no money to cushion the chaos. His parents refused to fund his lifestyle. Friends stopped answering his calls. A year passed. I renovated the condo. Every trace of his taste gone. I received a promotion at work and a raise I hadn't even asked for. I adopted a dog from the shelter, something Ethan had always refused because it didn't fit the aesthetic. Last month, I ran into Ethan's father at the grocery store. "You look well," he said. "I am," I answered honestly. He nodded. "He's not." 2 weeks ago, Ethan called from a new number. "I just need closure," he said, voice smaller than I remembered. "Closure," I replied, "is accepting that some bridges don't get rebuilt." I hung up, blocked the number, and for the first time in a long time, my phone stayed quiet, in the best possible way. Because the people who matter now, they answer when I call.